Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for coming through. Now, I remember like a while ago, it was announced that various local companies, well, in this particular instance, it was Edcon, had taken local designers, and they were now supplying the retailer. And this was all in an effort to boost the local industry, to make sure that South Africans buy local, and everybody is going to be a winner. We were told that everybody was a winner for a while, but if what we're hearing now is anything to go by, we seem to have gone back to where we said we had moved from. Your experience?
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to the listeners at large as well, and the viewers anyway, so to call. Vuyo, it is a fact what you have just only narrated on. This was the story for over the years that we have been, actually, I believe that we as the manufacturers and small manufacturers have just only been used as muse to a particular degree, because it's a test and trial that has been happening in the mainstream. We are taken for a particular phase, but in the back of this whole industry, you find that much of the volumes that are coming in are coming from outside our country than local manufactured. And then which leaves most of the time, because most of us as small industry, we get into these things with a hype and excitement and don't understand what we're putting ourselves into, because we have never been given a kind of an education to say, when you're dealing with a big giant, what are the tools that you need to carry yourselves with so that you can be ready when then you are given that particular space or that particular floor or that particular rail, that what does it mean to yourself? Because most of the time what has been happening therefore is that's why then you find this thing of coming forth and going backward again, 5 steps back, and when then we're supposed, the very same designers that were seen on the rails of those particular big chain stores, they don't exist and stay there for longer, because it becomes a kind of like a window dressing.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying. So you're saying to me that you feel you were taken for a ride. And I just want us to unpack that, because in rescuing Edcon, right?
Correct.
People like you were paraded. Correct. You are now able to manufacture goods, and they would be, or they were, on Edcon shelves.
Correct.
And you are saying that quickly disappeared. Is that what happened?
That's what always actually do take place, because it is not something, you don't get what we will call orders, or we will get what we will call a contract for 5 years or a contract for 2 years.
How did it work?
It works for a contract for a year or a 6 months within that particular period of the hype that is happening.
After the hype, it's all gone.
After the hype, it's all gone, it's quiet, therefore it's something else that needs to come in, because it's business as usual, and the big chain store, the big retail store needs to put some new things that have to be there, and it has to make money on that particular floor.
And that's now the retailer.
Yes.
But the government then said, in terms of that rescue plan for the clothing industry,
correct,
called the Clothing and Textiles Competitiveness Programs, right?
Yeah.
Program. This is like a program that started, 10 years ago?
Correct.
Now, in terms of that program, from what we were told, or from what government communications tell us, people like you were then assisted with how to manage your business, for example. You are assisted with things like how to access markets. Did that happen?
All those things Actually, I'm one of the people that started before it became fashionable as it is. Our government, without having to put fingers to them, because they've got this system of changing people in their government institution, you find that today you are dealing with so-and-so, tomorrow it's somebody else, the other time, and what have you. Sometimes we go to those missions internationally. You create the hype, but when you come back home, you tell the government or you tell the people that assisted you to go to that trade mission and say, this is an opportunity that I found and people are interested into my product. Therefore, I need funding and I need factories or I need to expand my business. That is not in existence.
What needs to happen?
What needs to happen, like I'm saying now where I'm sitting, the government is not supposed to take us for international trade mission. And in the meantime, they have not cleaned up us locally so that we can tell the truth when we are in these particular missions and say, I can produce so much. And it must be realistic that the fabric manufacturer, because it's a chain as well, we have got a value chain in our industry. Fabric manufacturers are not locally made, most of those particular fabrics. They're internationally made. They could be coming from China, Taiwan, anywhere in Asian countries.
Is there a way around that? Because input costs are a big factor. Everybody tells me we're talking duties of up to 22% on fabric.
Correct.
Which is the single biggest input cost.
Correct. Now,
is there a way around that?
There is a way which then the government have came up before. I mean, they came up with some kind of tariffs. Now, the very same tariffs that they came up with, I remember in the era of Trevor Manuel, when he was still the Minister of Trade and Industry and so forth, there's been so much stories that have been told in that particular, in our sector, that protection, but in another hand, they said, we don't need that much of a protection because we're operating in what we call free market.
And then China came.
And then China came with their cheap products. And in the meantime, they're coming with their cheap products. Now we've got unions as well in our country. And our unions as well, they also play a role. As much as they think they're protecting the workers, somewhere along the line, they are also causing this unemployment.
How?
They cause it by how they don't teach their workers, for example, to produce and to manufacture and to get into work and work and work. Now you'll find that within a space of time, they will be called into a meeting. Now they are leaving the production. And in the meantime, you've got an order that you're supposed to give out to the chain store or whoever that your client is going to be. And it is within their rights to go to a meeting, whatever it could have been, what kind of a meeting that they are going into as a union.
Well, it's interesting.
Now,
it's interesting you're saying that because I was reading somewhere, one of the retailers that are sourcing local, I think it was K-Way or something, where they were talking about the issue of the work ethic. But not only that, they were also talking about advanced skills and a lack of advanced skills and innovation. So there are fingers pointing.
Locally as well, I'm saying to you, even the union are not helping us to move the industry. Yes, they would be saying they must not be, because there must not be a kind of a work, the workers must not be paid wages that are not up to the scratch and so forth. But at the end of the day, do they then sit down with them and say, are you producing so much for? Because we are also have an interest of this particular country. How many of these companies that at the end of the day, because of wages, they found that they are working for their employees because they are more protected than them. And thereafter they shrink They said, no, I must get rid of X amount because I can't be paying so much and people are producing lesser than what I am supposed to be producing. And thereafter, what happened? Then you find that the industry gets shrinking. And even sometimes we are so worried about some of the very same guys that have been involved in the union. They go to the political arena. And when they are there, they know how we feel as business people and SMMEs, the challenges that we have. They start coming up with policies, and those policies are not helping us. They are actually destroying the very same industry. Same people that were, actually some of them were within SACTO. I've worked with them in the 1980s and 1990s. They were with SACTO, South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union. And thereafter they become ministers, and thereafter they become directors and so forth. But at the end of the day, when you call on them and say, guys, you know the problem that we do have, they don't come up forth.
So Ndamase, that was very enlightening. Thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you very much for having me too.
That was Executive Director of Vukani Fashions, Sonobile Ndamase.